Hello, all. You're listening to Heaving Bosoms, the podcast where two long-distance best friends recap the plot of romance novels while injecting commentary, comedy, and our deep love for the genre. This week, we're starting off with a Patreon shout-out. Kirsten H., you are descended from Aletheia, the Greek goddess of truth, sincerity, and becoming unhidden. In your professional life, you're dedicated to helping people find out what happened to their loved ones and finding clues to help the truth come to light. In your personal life, with a little more time now that your training is done, you're making the time to figure out what fills your heart and allows you to live the most authentic life possible. You have sincerity in spades, and it's what makes you an excellent partner, friend, and confidant. If you want access to tons of bonus content, shout-outs, thank you cards, gifts, and so much more, head over to our Patreon. There's a link on our website, or you can visit patreon.com/Heaving Bosoms podcast, or check the show notes. I link to it there. And now, we've got Act Like It by Lucy Parker.
Listen.
Hello, Erin.
Hi.
Hello, Erin. Oh, boy.
Oh, Melody. Listen, I coughed when we were doing the countdown. I coughed.
Yeah.
And you were like, wow. Like, you were pissed. How many times have you done just like a full-on burp or like something crazy during the count-off? And I have said nothing.
No, it is always right before the count-off.
Oh, I'm so
I
sorry,
always go,
madam. I'm so sorry.
Before we press record. Before, like a professional.
We counted to 12, so I think you should be good.
Erin, how the hell are you?
I'm great. I have something we have to talk about.
Oh my gosh.
My mom's going to get on me.
Oh, I love your mom.
Case.
I cannot wait. I will do anything for your mom. Anything. I mean, I'm not, this is on the record, anything for your mom.
All right. Well, she might be listening, so she may cash in on this this favor. Okay, so a couple months ago, my mom was like, have you ever discussed on your podcast why men like it when women wear their shirts?
No, we have not discussed that.
I don't think we have.
No.
And she's like, well, I want you to. I think you should, because I don't know. She's perplexed by this. She doesn't get it. And she thinks we should discuss it. And then I was like, yeah, sure, Mom, we will. And then like that's been like months ago. So then every time I talk to her, she's like, so did you talk about it? So did you talk about it on the podcast? No. And every week I'm like, no. And then we couldn't do it when we did that horrific book 2 weeks ago.
Mm-mm.
And so now this is it. This is the discussion.
Here we go. All right.
Why do you think it is that men like it when women wear their shirts?
Okay, here's what I think. I also think it's dumb, for the record.
I do too.
I think it's a big dumb. I always like when those scenes happen in movies, I'm always like, I mean, she was already hot. She's not like extra hot.
I mean, it's usually like a baggy shirt.
Especially since often in a button down, since they cast such like pint-sized women, usually it makes them look like a little kid in my mind because like their arms can't even get through the holes. You know, they're just like walking around like flappers. Okay, here's what I think. I think it's a territorial thing.
I think it is too.
Yeah, like this cave woman wear my coconuts kind of thing. my leathers. I'm draping her in my leathers. She smell like me now. Me see
that's what I think it is.
Clothes on her and mine. Don't have to pee on her. Good. Last girlfriend, not into that. She didn't like the pee. Shirt worked good. That's what I think it is.
Man, I feel really bad for this ex-girlfriend. Like, he tried to pee on her. He could have just given her the shirt, but he hadn't thought of it yet. That poor
here's
ex-girlfriend.
the thing. No, that poor caveman, he honestly tried to pee around her, but like, his aim
like
was all off. It was like spraying everywhere,
No.
He tried to pee a little bit too close to after sex. He couldn't. His urethra was still a little blocked. It was a bad...
Melody, my mom is listening for the first 10 minutes of this.
Your mom knows about urethras. What do you want?
I think it's the same thing. I think it's like when, like that thing of like men having their girlfriends, boys having their girlfriends wear their Letterman jackets in high school and stuff like that. I think that's what it is. It's like a territorial thing. It's like, now everybody knows that this one is my lady.
Mine. This one's mine. Yeah.
All right, HBs, if you have another idea,
let us know.
An email, and then
hit us up.
I will share with my mom if you have different opinions.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, and all the dude HBs out there, if you've got a different opinion, this is the first time we actually care about your opinion.
That's not true. We've asked dude HBs to write us before. That's not true.
This is the first time in the history of this podcast that we care about you dudes.
No, we're gonna lose our 20 male listeners.
I'm kidding, dude HBs. I'm kidding. You're so sensitive.
Yeah, geez.
These dudes.
HBs, gosh, you got really offended there for no reason.
Geez.
Yeah, wow.
Golly. Anyway.
Does this happen in this book that she wears his shirt?
Erin,
because you said that before we came on.
I feel like it happened, but I don't know because I read it 2 weeks ago when we were supposed to record this. And I pooped on it this week, and I didn't reread it. You pooped on it last week, and we couldn't record, and now I'm the one who's pooping on things. Just Heaving Bosoms defecates everywhere, and we're sorry about it.
So I read this in a cramming session before we were supposed to record last week. Yeah. I read the first half, and then the second half I read in a cramming session this morning before we were supposed to record.
Erin, you had a whole week.
No, Melody, Erin read book.
Hey, HBs, I think we need to maybe have a Vampire Diaries intervention on Erin.
No, Melody,
it might be time.
No, it's just a good show. It's a good show, and it's good for me. It's good for me. It's good.
I think you're too far in. I think I see you tapping on your veins over there.
No, it's important for me.
If you keep on not doing podcast things for Vampire Diaries, we're going to have an intervention.
I did it. I read the book.
All right, good.
I read it.
Great.
What happens first?
Okay, HBs.
No,
this is set in West End, London. We're in the theater.
Yes.
We are in an it's called the Metronome. Holy shit, look at all the things I remember. I don't have notes out. All right, it's called the Metronome. Yes. Her name is Lainey. She's backstage. She is a supporting actor, and she's watching her ex-fucking boyfriend who broke up with her via a cheating scandal coming out in the tabloids. That fucker. She's watching him do a practice run with a lady who's super, super nice. Her name is Chloe, I believe. And then this big, giant douche canoe called Richard Troy, who is the worst, and he's the snootiest, and he's
but he's the best, because he's
sucks.
The hero, and she
is
hates him,
the worst.
But she's gonna
He's so full of himself. He is awful. Then she finds out from one of the backstage people that the stage manager or the theater manager.
There's this gaggle of really demanding theater boss people that I never kept straight throughout the whole book. But they're they need things from them all the time. And they're always texting him being you did this and did it wrong. And we need to do rehearsals because of it. Or you need to patch this up in the press or whatever. Because this book is in the London Celebrities series.
Yes.
And so they're famous for being theater actors.
Yeah.
Is this a thing?
Yes.
Is that a thing?
Erin.
Is that an England thing? I don't know.
Have you heard of Patty fucking LuPone?
Sure, I guess. But I just feel like there's not a lot of like celebrity gossip columns about theater actors. Is that a thing? Is that an England thing?
I mean, I don't know if it's an England thing, but I bet it is.
Is that an America thing that I don't know about?
I mean, people know things about theater actors and like Broadway stars.
Okay, all right, okay. I'll back down. I just, there just seem to be a lot of paparazzi and stuff hanging around these guys the whole time.
Yeah, I don't see.
And I was thinking maybe this was an
city.
England thing that I didn't.
It might
about.
be. Hey, Redcoats, let us know if this
Redcoats?
if this is an England thing. Let us know.
Redcoat HBs, let us know. There's a
we
few
love
of
you. Yeah, we
We
love
know
you,
you.
and we want to know. So, okay, so Bob, the theater manager, brings her back, and she's there. It's Bob, Lynette, I think, and Pat. And
Yeah, I
Pat
think
is the
that's right.
PR person, and then Lynette is Richard Troy's agent.
Yes.
And so Bob is like, I don't know if you've seen this piece of papersies, but it's this big splashy article with a picture of Richard where he looks like incredibly hot and very chiseled.
Hot. Very hot.
Even
But
in the
also-
paparazzi photo. It's
Very
so
hot.
rude.
But also very, very rude, very much a crybaby, very much
Very terrible.
throwing a tantrum at a restaurant where he threw a plate at the head of a chef, something like
Allegedly, yes. He
Allegedly,
threw a plate
yes.
at a wall. It was a bad. Actually, Lainey's worried because she's wondering, she's like trying to rack her brain about why this guy wants to see her. She's like, what
Yeah, 'cause
what
it's
was the
always
bad
bad.
that I did? Yeah.
that. Mhm.
And so she was like, I mean, last week I bumped into Richard and I said I was sorry. And like, he made a misogynistic
Mhm.
remark at me. And so I don't know if like I wouldn't put him past him to like make a complaint about it, So like maybe he's mad at me because I touched His Majesty's arm.
Right. Because their whole relationship is basically he just ignores her and he's totally aloof and
Yeah.
like better than everybody.
What do you think the misogynistic remark was? I have an idea.
Oh, go for it. I have no clue.
You
I
didn't
didn't
think about
I
this?
didn't think twice about it. No.
Man, I did. I was like, what is a forgivable misogynistic remark? Because it has to be forgivable.
Right, because we have to fall in love with him.
I think he called her a clumsy cow.
That does seem like
England
that
is
would
that?
be in
That's an
character for him.
England. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a big England.
So basically his antics outside the theater being such an asshole to everyone are causing like press problems for the
Yeah,
play. Like they
They've
think
gone
that people
past
don't like
Bad
him.
Boy, and they've
Yes.
moved
Can I
into
read?
like, yes, please.
It says that Bob, who's holding this meeting, says there's a line at which a likable bad boy becomes a nasty, entitled bastard whom the public would rather see hung out to dry in the street than pay to watch prance around a stage in his bloomers. And when somebody starts abusing their fans, making an absolute ass of themselves in public places, and alienating the people who paid for his bloody Ferrari, then they may consider that line to be crossed.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Oh, because he's rich, too.
Oh, yeah, he's super rich. So they've been like giving out free tickets to fill the house for a few nights this month, and like they're very worried. And so Lainey is understandably sitting there going, what, pray tell, does this have to do with me? Like, this sounds like a Richard
they're
problem.
Always like bending over backwards trying to make him happy. Like everything is about, because he's the star of the thing. He's like the best
Right.
actor in the play, and he's like, we've got to keep Richard happy. So it's like the first time ever any of them have said a bad word about Richard. So she's
Right.
like half being like, yay, they finally get it. What
They're
a
gonna
dick this
fire
guy
him.
is. Like maybe he'll get fired. And then half of her is like, no, they would never fire him.
They
like
can't
what's going
fire
on?
him.
Like this is an alternate universe.
Yeah.
So what they've decided, since she's recently on the outs with her ex-boyfriend, who's also in the play.
And she is, quote, a publicist's dream.
Oh,
Because
yeah, you
she's
guys,
like
she's-
the darling of the theater.
She never does anything wrong. She's super nice to everybody.
Yeah, and she just had her heart broken, and she has a charity that she started a few years ago that raises money for kids with cancer. And so
Shining
Shining
stars.
Lights.
shining.
Close, Erin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
She's a Jessica Rabbit redhead. That is said several times, and I am
you guys,
so into
huge
it.
boobs on this one. This heroine is so top heavy, she can't do a cartwheel, which is mentioned at one point in time. If she tried to do a cartwheel, she'd never get back up again because her boobs would just slap her in the face and then she'd stay down there.
She'd be knocked out forever.
Yeah. Knocked out. Yeah. Knocked out by knockers.
So they're like, we have a plan. Here's the plan.
Uh-huh.
It's a fake dating situation.
So of course she's like, no, I could never
she's
fake
like, fuck
date
that and fuck you,
Richard. All that would do would be to tarnish my reputation.
That's right.
That's not going to help him. That's going to hurt me.
Yeah.
And then that'll hurt all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Do they bring in Richard on this meeting?
They do.
Okay.
So there's not even like a knock on the door or anything. Richard just
right.
throws the door open
in.
and saunters in and sits down all elegantly and crosses his legs that his ankle is resting over his knee.
It's a good sit.
He doesn't even look at Lainey.
Nope.
She's not even in the room to him.
He says, "You rang, sire," to the publicist. So good.
Yes. And so they're like, hey, Richard, this is what we're going to do. You're going to fake date Lainey. And he's like, no, I absolutely am not.
And he suggests that this is something she engineered. He has such an ego, you guys, that he thinks that it's maybe something she thought of so that maybe she can, like, I don't know, get near it, smooch him or whatever.
Right.
And she says, I hope you don't think this is my idea. I've seen what happens when you leave the house. I might as well paste on a few feathers, slap a target on my forehead, and take a stroll during duck season. He says, I hope you don't think that I want to be publicly associated with a woman who, presumably in a state of complete sobriety, took off her clothes for Will Farmer, who's the other guy in the play. Which I love their back and forth.
I love it. Oh, I love them. Their banter throughout this whole thing is so good.
He says, a hit, a very palpable hit. Under his breath when he says that. Because you guys, her ex-boyfriend, who's also in the play, is like very hot. But that's kind of like where it ends.
Yeah, but he's sort of like also a dumb, and he's definitely a big dick nose egomaniac.
Right. I mean, he has some flashes of redeeming moments every once in a while.
And then he has big, giant flashes of unforgivable.
Yes.
I wouldn't even call them flashes. I'd call them streaks of unforgivable.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
But he's not like a caricature cookie cutter villain.
No.
He's clearly a villain in this thing. But you can tell like why she liked him. They have moments where they have good conversations where it seems like, oh, I can see why somebody would like this guy. Because I hate it when they do this where they have like a horrible ex-boyfriend that you're like, why would the heroine ever even give this guy the time of day? Like
absolutely.
She's smart and cool and funny and nice and pretty. Like why was she with this dick nose? Mm-hmm. And then you can kind of figure out in this one why she kind of fell into bed with him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He can definitely turn on the charm.
Mm-hmm.
So both of them are like, absolutely forget it. And then they're like, we want 1 month out of you. You keep up appearances for 4 weeks. And then he says, I'll see that half of the profits from 2 evening shows in November are donated to the kitty charity of yours. What's it called? Shine a light? She's like, shining
better than mine,
lights,
which is shining flowers.
I mean, she is a star. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and so she immediately is like, Saturday nights. Like, you're giving me a weekend, not 2 Wednesday nights of profits. You were going to donate Saturday revenues to my charity. And Bob is like, okay, but you're going to have to really, really sell it. You're going to have to like hump him in public.
Yeah, like hang on him. Yeah. We're going to need smooches. We're going to need the whole thing. And I'm like, yes, we are.
Absolutely.
So would you like to know?
Yes, please.
Sorry. Would you like to know
well,
Richard?
they get Richard to agree because he wants to go for the presidency of the Royal Society of Performing Arts, the RSPA. And they're like, your bad press is going to keep you from this presidency. And he's like, so they both agree. Yeah.
So then like their first thing is some like fancy
yeah,
shirt. They have to go to like
gala.
A fancy gala.
It's a party with
dinner.
Past hors d'oeuvres. I'm sure
Listen, you guys, it's a fancy dressy party.
Yeah.
Which I was like, is this going to be all fancy dressy parties? Because I am psyched for
super
a fancy
into
dressy
it.
Party book. But it's not. but it's some.
It's enough.
So they go to fancy dressy party, and it's very like they're gonna hold hands, but then she's like, he tries to hold her hand, but she like shies away, and then it's like, I've got to act like it's very, I don't want you to touch me, but I guess I have to.
Yep.
And the publicist people are there, and they're like, you guys look terrible. Like, stop.
Right. You just keep
doing
scowling at each other.
Yeah, it's like
Stop
every time they touch them, they have to give each other a mean look of like, I didn't enjoy that.
Right. Wait, were you going to tell me what somebody looks like, Erin? It felt like that's what you were gearing up for.
Yes, I was going. Would you like to know what Richard looks like?
I would.
It says, Richard smiled back at Greta. I don't remember who Greta is. I'm sorry.
Oh, she's an old journalist.
Oh, that's what it is. It's that terrible journalist that comes up to them. And is like prying and asking like really unflattering questions about her past relationship and stuff. You guys, the media does not come off great in this book. But she's very like, ooh, I had no idea you two were together.
Right.
And like, okay. Richard smiled back at Greta. It was a completely manufactured, calculated movement that had nothing whatsoever to do with genuine feeling. That didn't lessen the impact. Eyes became more blue, interesting lines and dimples appeared around firm lips, and a face that could be overly severe in repose became almost mythically handsome. Even Lainey's heart gave an extra thump in response, and she still wanted to upend her cocktail over his smug, shapely head. It's a really great enemies to lovers description because it's like acknowledging the handsomeness while also wanting to strangle and maim.
Yeah. Man, Lucy Parker walked that line so well.
This is a great book, you guys. We haven't said this. This is a fantastic little book. It is a little bite-sized. It sounded like it was a big chore to read at the beginning of the thing. It's not. It's like 250 pages less, maybe even. It's a nice
and
little,
it's a snippy, snappy,
concise,
like you want to turn the page. I mean, their descriptions, their banter, their chemistry. It not only sizzles from the beginning, but it sizzles in all the right ways for an enemies to lovers. And actually, when it said a slow burn romance, I was a little like, Melody no like slow burn though. but I felt like it wasn't. Like, I felt like the sex, when we finally get to it, wasn't that far in, and it was like totally appropriate, you know?
Yeah.
I believed every moment of it. It was great.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I think the publicist does come over and she's like, hey, y'all.
Does this whole little.
Oh, wait. Yeah. I'm sorry. I have to say this other thing because Richard looks at Lainey and he's like, did your stylist choose that dress for you? And she's like, oh my God, I don't have a stylist. And then he like sips on a drink and then he goes, have you considered hiring one? Oh,
he is savage, you guys.
But when we get to his perspective, he's like, that dress does nothing for her absolutely gorgeous body. But like what he said out loud is like, put up your dukes, I'm gonna maim you, you know?
He at one point in this evening makes like a Doctor Who joke.
Yes.
And her reaction to it is not like, oh, he's a little, I mean, it is a little bit like this of like, he's a little nerdy. Maybe he's like me.
Right.
Which is the easy way for a writer to go with something like that. Like, oh, there's more to him. But what she says on the page is like, she'd never imagined him even existing outside of the theater. It's like, like when you see a high school teacher shopping for groceries. It's like she had never even like thought of the possibility that Richard like wore pajamas or had
like
a home.
Does things, right.
Or right. And I just thought that was like, I thought that was a really cool way to put that.
It was like, so perfect. She actually says it several times because she's like, you know, at one point there, later on in the book, she's like, so what does a Saturday morning off look for you? Like, what does that look like?
What do you do? Yeah.
What do you, how does it, what? It's so funny. Okay. So then the publicist comes over and she's like, you guys look like someone's torturing you. And they're like, well, that's kind of true.
That's exactly what's happening.
But the publicist is like, okay, you guys need to like sell this though. So how about a smooch or something? And they're both like, ugh, this is terrible. I hate this idea. And then they kiss and it is a yuck. and it is very
It's
stilted.
a yuck.
It's a yuck.
It's my favorite thing is like, it's not like they do their first, like usually when there's like the first kiss in the enemies to lovers, that's like the manufactured one.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, and there was like,
there's like a little
there.
spark.
There was like a little
There's an
spark.
unexpected.
It's like the most nauseating experience of her life.
Oh, it's
This is
great.
awesome. The next, when they leave, I just want to say this. He doesn't thank the valet.
Oh.
Like, he tips the valet, but doesn't thank the valet.
Yeah.
And she's like, would it kill you to thank people that, like, do things for you?
Right.
And he's like, I paid him. I paid him for
the
doing
thing.
the thing
Right.
that he did. There's no additional thanks that need, like, no one thanks me for doing a performance every night. It's my job.
Right.
I get paid for it. That's the thanks. So that was the exchange between me and the valet. She's like, no, like, he's doing something, but you need to and then he
Right.
it's like, and goes, like, finds the valet and is like, thank you for parking my car. But I just like that little glimmer of like, he did that for her.
Yeah, he said, appreciate it. And then the valet
Right.
like blinks and grins. And then he looks at her and he goes, satisfied? And it says, she was, oddly, for the first time ever, possibly. She gave him a genuine smile. Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cute.
So,
and then he looks like a little bit disconcerted about it, and his eyes flicker to her mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And then they flicker up to her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy, it's a good. And then he drives her home.
And then we kind of follow her home to, she has a cat that's also named Richard. It's her landlady's cat. So she has Cat Richard and Human Richard. She talks to her sister. I think this is maybe when we learn about her family.
Oh, a little bit. Wait, she talks about Cat and Human Richard, though, because Cat Richard has one of those super grumpy faces. He's a grumpy face cat.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it says, Human Richard, for all his good looks, was afflicted with a similarly epic case of resting bitch face. He had the elastic features of a natural-born actor, but at the close of a scene, he tended to return to his factory setting of grouch. So good.
And that's why when he smiles, it's so magical.
Yeah. Oh, this is one of the moments where she thinks about, like, what he goes home to. Because, like, for the first time, she's thinking about it. And she's like, I bet he has, like, one of those Jeeves-style butlers. And, like, has to murmuringly approve all his things, including his pajamas. And then it says, although 10-1 he slept naked, her mind temporarily shorted out at that point. Like, yeah.
Why is that, lady?
Naked
because he's
scenes.
hot. Okay. So she calls her sister Sarah. And I guess like the photos have already kind of reached the London gossip stuff. So her sister's like, what is this? And so like she has a conversation about how he's vile and they're just doing it for show.
Yeah.
But Sarah's kind of like, but he is like crazy hot though. And Lainey's like, no, of course not. Not crazy hot.
What are you talking about? Bah.
Not a handsome, for sure. And
Super not.
The sister says, I wonder what he's like in bed. And she's like, you're a married woman.
Uh-huh.
Sarah says, I vowed to be faithful, not dead from the waist down. And whatever his faults, you can't deny that Richard is a bit of a dish.
A bit of a dish.
I wish we could say a bit of a dish in the U.S.
I mean, I think we're going to now.
I would like to. Anyway, yeah, it's cute. And I really do think this is where we find out about her family.
Yeah, so we find out the backstory of Shining Lights because Sarah asks her about an upcoming fundraiser. And Lainey gets a little quiet and Sarah says, I miss her too. And we don't find out all, but we do know that she had a little sister who died of cancer. And that's why she started Shining Lights, her foundation. And so I think like on the weekend or something, she has a small fundraiser in like a remote village. And Sarah asks why they're even doing that at all, because it's small potatoes. You know, they're not going to raise a bunch of money. Lainey says that the village last year lost a teenager to lymphoma or something. Like it was a cancer. It was a terrible, super tragedy. So yeah, so she's working hard to like make the world better after her loss, which is a big wonderful.
It's a big wonderful.
Golly.
So we see that like she has this like homey flat where she's like friends with her landlady and there's a cat and it's like cute and she has a sister that she calls and stuff. Then we follow Richard home.
Oh boy.
And his housekeeper, like Lainey's not like so far off on like Richard's situation. Like, he drives his Ferrari home, comes home to an empty house. His housekeeper leaves the TV on or leaves the radio on when she leaves because she feels like it's more homey for him to come home
it's
to
more
like
welcoming
some sounds instead of a empty house, which is not true. Like, I feel like if I come home and the TV is on, it to me is like someone's in my fucking house. Like,
yeah, right?
I freak out.
Well, or it sounds like you're walking into a scene. You know, it sounds like you're walking into a situation instead of being able to build your own atmosphere. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to going around your house and like flipping on lights and and turning things on that I think is much more welcoming than this.
Yes. He says she was convinced it was friendlier than coming home to an empty house. Apparently his housekeeper was confusing him with a dog with separation anxiety. Lovely woman. Absolutely no common sense. Anyway, he pours his little whiskey glass. Everything you think that this guy does, he does. He drinks his little whiskey. He looks at the oil portrait of his father, his conservative politician father. He scowls at it. And he thinks about Lainey and how she smells of vanilla and how she cuddled up next to him. And then he dismisses the thought.
He dismisses it.
He says Lainey had been a mild revelation tonight. Jessica Rabbit actually had a personality and a fairly biting tongue. He shook his head. She was wasted on the simpering. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Simpering.
Well, word I know. She was wasted on the simpering legs and lashes roll they'd given her in the Cavalier's tribute. She could probably have made a decent job at Helen, who's the lead. Chloe tended to oversimplify and oversex the calculating, sardonic character. On the other hand, Chloe wasn't moronic enough to fall in bed with Will Farmer. So, the one glaring flaw he has when he thinks of Lainey is she's beautiful and she's smart and she's funny and she's great, but she must be deeply stupid.
Yes.
She had sex with this other guy.
There must be something irreparably bad about her.
Right. Or else she wouldn't have fallen for his bullshit.
Yeah.
So the next thing they have is this farmer's market sort of. I don't really understand what it is. It's some kind of a farmer's market-y sort of a.
It's
England
a fete.
Situation.
It's an FETE.
Which I did, by the way. Which I did
Summer
highlight.
Uh-huh.
And find out how to pronounce. And I was going to before you did. And I did know how to pronounce it. And I was going to.
Well, I'm sorry I took that away from you.
The definition of it was very vague. It was very a gathering of some sort or something like that. And I was like, well, that doesn't help me. But there's pigs there.
It's like a summer lawn party. But it's happening in October.
And there does seem to be wares.
It's like a tent party.
There are wares and handicrafts.
Well, there are the biggest squashes Richard has ever seen.
There's some very... You know what?
I'm
with Richard on this one. I love a large vegetable. You know this. I get so pumped for the Alaska State Fair. You guys, we have some of the biggest vegetables in the world in the Alaska State Fair because you guys, 24 hours of sunlight.
24 hours of sunlight. You can't stop them.
Big. We have some really large cabbages and pumpkins up here at the State Fair.
Man.
And I don't care how many times I see it. I lose my shit every time.
Runs to them. She will sprint to the giant vegetables.
I love a giant vegetable. David and I have this kind of joke where I note the time passing throughout the year of being wow, it's February. Soon it'll be the fair. I say that throughout the year. Immediately after the fair, I'll be wow, it's October. Soon it's going to be fair time.
Yeah.
The fair is coming. And you guys, the fair is canceled this year. And those pumpkins are just going to rot in the fields. What's going to happen to them?
I hope they do a social media thing where they stand next to them and post pictures.
I don't know if we're coordinated enough for that up here. But I will not get to see the vegetables. But so I'm with Richard on this where I love an impressively large vegetable.
Me too.
I like it when they weigh them. They put them up on the big scale.
I'm always impressed that they can get them up there.
They do the chains. They lift them up and then they announce it. I love it. Okay.
So they've got ladies are throwing their yard sale stuff together and antique stuff.
It's like a yard sale, but also a pig. I don't understand what it is, but it's a very cute and it's a very festive and it's a very England
sweet
village times.
There are
sweet.
crumpets and tea as well.
It seems to be extremely British.
A scone.
Yeah, a biscuit. Chocolate
Definitely
biscuit?
biscuits. And honestly,
I swear, every
if it
time
were
they said
100
chocolate
years-
biscuit in this thing, I was like, chocolate biscuit. And I thought of American biscuits and what I could do to make a buttery, chocolatey biscuit. But
Is
that's
a
not what they
different.
mean.
Is very
It's a
different. Yeah.
It's like maybe you dip it in a tea.
Yeah. I wonder.
It seems like there's tea involved with the biscuit. Whenever there's
gotta
biscuits,
be.
there always seems to be a tea.
Yeah, it's like a cookie with a tea. Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know. Do you think any of these lady had frilly umbrellas, or are we too modern
my
times for
gosh.
the frilly umbrellas? You know,
I don't know. I
I
don't
don't
know.
either. Gosh, I wish I knew.
I'll tell you this,
Mm.
in Mystic Falls, whenever they have a town party, there's usually at least
come
one
on.
frilly umbrella around.
on.
And that's America times Virginia's. So I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know.
All right. Well, is it America times Virginia's? No.
It's just
Mystic
Virginia's.
Falls
It's
is a
contemporary
now times.
It's a now times Virginia's.
Good. Don't
I'm
say
just saying
America
it's
times
not
then.
England, where you would think that you would see more frilly umbrellas. That's
Honestly, you guys, it might be intervention time because Erin is now fucking up her own time periods
You guys,
to incorporate
it's
Vampire
good for me.
Diaries.
It's good for me. It's good for me. It's good for me. It's helping me. It's helping me. It's fine. I'm under control and I'm fine. I am managing my life responsibilities. Fine.
Cool. Okay, so they show up and Richard is a big sourpuss about this.
Wait, but this moment with
What?
the baby is my favorite thing.
Okay.
So it says, we're in Lainey's head, and it says, a young woman with questionable maternal instincts shoved her defenseless infant into Richard's arms, ignoring his furious response while she unearthed her phone. Like, she wants a picture with them.
Yeah.
And so when she like needs to get her phone, she just shoves her baby at him to hold while she like gets the phone out. Oh, it's so good. And then it's like she takes a few pictures and it says that it was debatable who looked more wrathful, Richard or the infant he was dangling an arm's length away from him like a mud splattered football. And then Lainey says, you do realize you're holding a baby and not a leaking bucket. She goes, it's against your chest, hand under his bottom. Honestly, you must have had a cuddle before.
Uh-huh.
And he says, yes, but women don't appreciate a hand under their bottom until at least I bought them dinner.
Uh-huh.
That was pretty funny. But anyway, yeah, he
Also,
doesn't like a baby.
That does come back.
Yes.
Don't worry,
There
listener.
are a lot of their little jokes come back, which is
love
great.
I love it.
And yeah, Richard's inner narrative about children is very like
It's very Erin. Yeah.
I identified hard with it. 'Cause he doesn't hate babies. He just like doesn't want to hold it
Yeah.
necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. So then they go into a tent because she's like, hey, fucker, this is my thing. We're doing this for your image. So, like,
Right.
don't poop all over my charity fete. Don't do that. Like, turn that frown upside down. Honestly, I don't know if this is her inner monologue or not, but she's like, this is something Will would have done. He would have
she says it.
Oh, good.
To him.
Oh, good.
It says, she's like, he's like, why can't we just write a check to this charity?
Right.
Like, if this is so important, why do we have to like be here and look at pigs? Like, this can't be raising a lot of money.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's for appearances, it's for publicity, it's so people can feel like they're doing something. Writing a check doesn't create publicity for a charity, and this does. And he says, you've made your point. And she goes, not quite. For the record, you're behaving exactly the way Will would.
Mm-hmm.
And a nerve twitched above Richard's right eyebrow. Is that blatant insult supposed to make me reevaluate my life choices? And she shrugs and says, it would make me think twice. I loved.
Good stuff. And it does. So they start tooling around the place, and then they go into that. What, Erin? Tell me.
Sorry, it's the big squatches.
Is it? Yeah.
There's a pumpkin and there's a sign on it that says, we hope you're having a gourd day. And he just frowns at it and goes, is that a joke? Just like, what else would it be?
Ooh, no, and then he says,
things.
not the god-awful pun, the competition itself. There's actually a contest for the largest pumpkin. And she's like,
And then he
yeah.
gets into it.
And then he gets in and he's like, I'm so sorry. It's so funny. He goes,
He loves
Jesus,
it.
look at the size of that thing. And then they spend like 2 hours in that tent because Richard is like asking the farmer questions about how it got
How
so
did you
big.
do this? How did you achieve this?
Yeah. Then it says, in her inner monologue, it says, escorting her to a party, no interest. One of her more expensive dresses, totally unimpressive. Acting with her in a play, distinctly underwhelmed. And then bowled over by a gigantic vegetable. She chose to be amused. It's very cute.
Yeah.
Okay, so then he like buys some stuff.
She's very surprised that he's like walking around this place with like purchases he's made. She has a conversation with the lady whose is it daughter recently died of cancer or something.
I think so, yeah.
She has like a tearjerker conversation with somebody and like it brings up some memories of her sister and she's like almost crying and he's very like, are you okay?
Yeah.
And she expects him to make a joke. Oh, when they were at the fancy party and they wanted them to kiss, they told him that they should whisper some things to each other and then like delight in their whispers and then kiss each other. You know, they're actors. They can do this.
Yeah.
And he leans in, you know, into her ear and whispers, "You're overplaying the death scene every night." And then like they did their kiss. So she kind of when he like leaned in, she expected him to mutter something similar about like, "Hey, you're hamming it up a little bit too much for the charity." But instead he asked her if she's okay. And that was a big sweet.
Oh, it's a big sweet. And then they notice that there is a photog there. There's a paparazzo standing in the wing. And so then they do snuggle up a bit. And I think this is where he puts that hand right on her bum. And she's
I think maybe, yeah.
She's like, "Hey, what are you doing with your hand on my bum?" And he's like, "I've heard that it's the secret to a good cuddle." So someone told me that it was the secret to a good cuddle.
During this performance for this photographer, he like sniffs her scalp, which is kind of like, I don't know. I get nervous when somebody sniffs my scalp.
Too.
Have I told you about my pizza crust nervousness?
No, tell me.
Oh, man.
What does a pizza crust have to do with your scalp?
I can't. I don't know if I've ever told Liz this. I mean, she was there, but I don't know if I've mentioned it since we were like 12. Liz, if you're listening. So Liz, who guest hosted on, what was that book called? And playing the role of herself when we were doing your maternity leave a couple of years ago. So we were friends in middle school. And I don't know why. We were at a movie theater and we were sniffing each other's hair. Me, her, our friend Trish, and somebody else. Our friend Alyssa, I think.
Sounds like a 12-year-old
thing
thing to
sniffs.
do. Yep.
Whatever. I don't remember why this happened. And Liz smelled my hair and said, "Your scalp smells disgusting. It smells like pizza crusts."
Liz!
And ever since that moment, in like 1998, I have been self-conscious that my hair scalp smells like pizza crust. And then I made the mistake, which it probably did because I was like a gross middle schooler.
You were also
at the time.
sitting in a movie theater. There's nothing greasier than a movie theater.
Like pizza crust.
Yeah.
And I was probably like, "Liz, your hair smells delightful like strawberries." And then she hit me with this pizza crust insult. It was terrible. And then I made the mistake, 20 years later of telling that story to my husband. No. And now every time he gets close to my hair, he's like, "Ugh, pizza crust. Oh my God, so gross." It stabs me in the heart every time, and he thinks it's hilarious. And he doesn't, it's a real deep-seated, it's something I could talk to a therapist about. That's the level.
Yep.
Anyway, so when he leaned in and she was like, I got the impression that he wasn't just leaning in to press a kiss to my forehead, but that he was sniffing my scalp. I was like, "Get him out of there, girl. Like, it might smell like pizza crust. Like, you need to get out of this situation." Like, I had a panic reaction reading that, which I don't think is what the reaction that you were supposed to have when
and she did not have that reaction. It says, a manipulative cuddle with Richard seemed to be her best alternative to a spa day, with the sound of his heartbeat subbing in for the soothing oceanic soundtrack at her favorite salon. He had shifted his seedling pots to one arm. He bought seedling pots, you guys.
That's what
for
it was.
His,
little
for
seedlings.
His basket.
For his window baskets. I remember now. And she's like, this makes her whole brain explode at the idea that he has a place that has window baskets with little herbs in them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the fingers of his free hand were spread against the small of her back, and he rubbed his palm in a slight rubbing circular motion. They realized simultaneously that the photographer had gone, and they were just standing there, dreamily groping one another. It's so sweet. Yeah.
But then he goes outside, and somebody has keyed his car and written Dick on the side of his Ferrari. And I think it's that chef or whatever.
No, they're really far away.
Oh, so it was just a rando?
It's just a rando. It's just a kid.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a neighborhood, whoever. Yeah, so somebody has keyed Dick into his car, which honestly is the funniest thing you can do to a person named Richard. I'm sorry.
Who is kind of a dick.
He is kind of a dick. And then...
I'm sorry. I'm probably too far ahead. What are you going to say?
Oh, nothing. It's just like the vein in his forehead starts pulsing, and he's
mad.
like clenching and unclenching his fists, and he's like who did anybody see who did this? This is my Ferrari. And she has to
police report.
Yeah, she has to go over and like soothe him and be like, "Hey, you need to cool it because we're on good press times." Right now,
be throwing plates. Right, everybody needs to see you react to this in a cool, calm, and collected police report sort of way.
Yeah,
and she stays and cleans up the thing, and he does his police report thing, and then they ride home.
And it is a quiet ride home.
But then she just starts thinking about like how great the Ferrari is. Like how nice the features are. And then she starts thinking about how comfy the seats are and just like moving back and forth in the seats, like trying to like test all the different angles and stuff. It goes, the seat was comfortable too. She wiggled her bottom from side to side, enjoying the pliable cushion. A little bounce or two to test the suspension. Not bad. The silence suddenly became more pointed, and she looked up into Richard's aggravated, long-suffering stare. I see why you aren't supposed to transport the infantry without a car seat, he said, annoyed, and lightly grabbed hold of her knee while she bounced again. Why can't you just sit still like a normal person? It's like being trapped in a small box with Tigger. I was like... I just love the idea of like him being in a very tense, silent situation of like my Ferrari and her just being like bounce, bounce, bounce. That's nice. What if I lean back here?
I like this.
I love it.
And then he calls her Tig for the rest of the book, which is the cutest.
So cute. And so lost on Erin for the next, I would say 20% of the book, where I'm like, who's Tig?
No.
Yep. Erin. Didn't connect it for like a good 50 pages.
No. Erin.
Yep.
That's incredible.
But it's a very cute nickname.
Anyway, so she goes like, she flicks it right back at him, and she's like, I mean, speaking of behaving like a sane person, congrats on not going off back there. That's really great. And it says the skin of her knee was prickling under his fingers.
Put this guy's hand on her leg and he hasn't taken it away.
She delicately lifted them away digit by digit and couldn't resist an admiring stroke of his fingernails, which is a weird thing to do, but I also love it.
I love it when they do a weird.
Me too.
What I think about all the time, time.
Tell me.
Is in 10 Things I
Hate
Sarah
About You?
McLean.
Oh, no, 9 Rules to Break when romancing a rape.
Sure, yep. When he took his teeth and ran them across the side of her wrist, I think about that all the time. Like
constantly.
How weird that would be in real life.
But also
how hot that was. That was so hot.
That would send a lightning bolt straight to your doodah, you know?
Yeah. I think about that scene all the time where I'm like, what a strange thing to write that completely worked. And also like, I feel like this was too.
Yeah, completely.
Fingernail graze.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So then he takes her home.
No, I think they go to a performance right after this.
Oh, that's right. They do.
Then she has that whole conversation with Chloe, who's a delight, where she's like, you and Richard, huh? Like, I never thought of that because you've never interacted with each other. But now, like, I see it, like, it kind of fits. It's kind of like perfect, right? And she's like, what?
Yeah, lady's like, what? I think not.
She's really got to dance a line between how dare you and like, yeah, it's great. And I'm really enjoying
love
myself.
it. He's so wonderful.
And Will confronts her too, in like a real sick way, where it's like a very arm grab and a like, what are you doing? This is ridiculous sort of a thing.
Listen, I don't know whether or not Ms. Parker tries to redeem Will. I would probably read it, but I would be hard to win over.
Well, I think he could be redeemed. I think his behaviors are fairly explained. Like, he hates Richard as much as Richard hates him. So it's like he had this relationship with her. It obviously ended horrible because of horrible actions on his part.
Yeah.
But I think he's very like, whoa, don't be with this asshole. Like,
right.
I kind of get where Will's coming from. He just doesn't really execute very well and makes some pretty big ass hat moves.
Yeah, I just Googled Will Farmer Lucy Parker, and the only thing that comes up is Act Like It. So I don't think that she tries to redeem him, and I'm happy about it.
He's just not a cookie cutter villain, which I really like.
Yeah,
I just like
definitely.
that he's not a total asshole.
Definitely.
But we find out that the girl that he cheated on her with was named Cristal, which I really like. What a name!
It's good stuff.
But yeah, we get this description where it says, on paper, Will and Richard would sound almost interchangeable. Hair black, eyes blue, build distracting. Surprisingly fit, both of them, for men who would rather be seen dead than sweating in public. In person, however, they didn't look remotely alike. Richard's hair was curly and his face was far more sculpted. He looked like a carved mask she'd seen in a British museum. Will was pure Calvin Klein pretty boy. He was aesthetically more handsome, but Richard was sexier. Women would probably want to tack Will's two-dimensional face to the wall of their office, but they'd rather have a three-dimensional Richard, mussed and sleepy, against their pillow.
Yeah, they would. Boy, oh boy. Yowza.
I really loved that.
And then the next line is, had she just admitted to finding Richard sexy?
Whoops.
It's so good. Toopsies.
So the next thing they have to do is her and Richard have to go do a publicity interview thing. Which makes Lainey, for some reason, she gets very nervous about interviews. And she shouldn't be the one that is, because she's always the one that's doing the right thing.
Right.
But this particular interviewer is just kind of known for asking shitty questions and kind of trapping people in boxes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they get there, and at some point she figures out that Will's there too. And he's going to also be in the interview.
Yeah, they find out when they get there.
Yeah.
And then
she realizes it's a trap.
Well, and so it's not only them, but it's also there's another couple that seems to be publicity dating at a rival theater. And the woman of the couple has been her sort of not rival, but she's known her since they were both older teenagers. And she knows that she's very cutthroat about competition, and she's, she's sort of a yuck, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she gets there and she looks at Richard and she's right. Did you know about this? And Richard was absolutely not. I would not allow anybody to blindside you with this had I known.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, at least there's that.
Yes. So Sadie's the one that warns her about Richard. And she comes over and is like, do you have anything lined up for the end of the play? Because it seems like you're probably going to get fired.
Right.
She's like, what? Okay.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I would think twice before jumping into bed with Richard Troy. She's just such a little bitch.
Yeah.
I hate her.
Sadie knows that they've known each other since they were teenagers. And still the first thing she says to Lainey is, oh, you're at the Metronome, right? I think we've met, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's she's one of those.
Hollywoods are hard.
Yeah. It's a gross. Okay.
Yes.
So then they get on stage and the interviewer is immediately...
Yeah, you missed the best part.
What did I miss?
Where she's really nervous sitting there next to Richard and it's about to begin and she's sitting there shaking and trying to calm herself down. And he moves in and it says, all right, he asked evenly. And she nodded. She wrapped her thumb across his... he he holds her hand to calm her down. And Will's like staring daggers at her, and he does a nice little thumb rub on her hand and like calms her down. It's a big romance, and you missed it. Okay, all right, moving on.
It is a big romance. Yeah. So the interviewer starts with like softball questions, and Will and Sadie are like, "Oh no, it's totally rad to work, 8 shows a week.
We love working with our exes. It's the best."
And the bosses at the theater are so perfect all the time. The directors are never divas. Like all of that. Then the interviewer basically just like turns her head and is like, "So Richard, you've been a bit of a fuckwad in public, huh?
You're an asshole."
Yeah. And Lainey immediately gets her hackles up. And there's been a couple of times when both of them have felt like protective over the other one up until now. But this is when Lainey really comes out guns a-blazing.
No. She goes in on Lainey first and then goes in on Richard.
That's right.
So she goes in and is like, "Oh, isn't it hard? There's so much drama, and isn't it hard to, work with your current boyfriend and your ex-boyfriend and blah, blah, blah. And, don't you think you like made mistakes?" Like she tries to kind of go in on her personal life. And Richard says, "The last time I checked, Lainey was a grown woman capable of making her own decisions. And I don't really think she needs to apologize for a private relationship between 2 unattached, consenting adults.
Yeah.
Do you?"
Ooh.
And the interviewer's kind of like, and then Richard goes, "Do you have a partner?" And she's like, "Well, I have a whatever." And he's like, "But naturally, it's your first and only relationship. You've never dated other people in the past." "None." He maintained eye contact. "I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. I wouldn't like to be irresponsible and just throw around implications of hypocrisy." And she gets like, "Ooh." But then the interviewer goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, as opposed to throwing plates." Like, he's not going to throw around hypocrisy. He's not going to throw... And she's like, "Or throwing public temper tantrums," or, and goes in on that. And that's when Lainey cuts in and says, "Unfortunately, it is. It is all true. All these things that you're saying. I am a world-class diva. If I miss a cue or forget my lines, I just take it out on the props, start chucking plates all around the stage, vases, goblets. If I'm really frustrated, I'll drop kick the silverware into the stalls." She winked at the visibly hostile host. "It's an extra 10 points if you land a silver spoon in the royal box." And everybody laughs, and it's diffused. And it's a very big cute that he stood up for her, and then she came right back and stood up for him.
Yeah, it's so good. And then she goes further because the interviewer tries to press on, and she's like, "Well, you have gained a bit of a reputation, and like, there have been these reports of breaches of contract and la 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 la." And then Lainey cuts in and she's like, "Which is a shocking reflection on the state of journalistic ethics in this city, right? Like hacking into government, blah blah blah. Why would anybody do... What do you think of that?" Oh, man, it's just so good. So they totally derail the interview, and they stick up for each other, and they have to end the interview.
And afterwards, they get a text from the publicity team. Well, Lainey gets a text from them. They're still together. They're like out in the rain. I think he's like walking her home in the rain.
Yeah,
or like
something.
They're, I think, under an umbrella or something, or under a eave. And it says, from the publicist to Lainey, "To clear up any confusion on the issue, the point of this unholy alliance is to elevate Richard's reputation, not for the two of you to become mutually irritating." But they read that text with his warm breath against her ear.
Ooh, boy, do they.
Yeah, so he's like walking her up to her apartment at this point. I think.
And Richard...
There's an almost kiss moment here.
And Richard... It says, "It had been a very long time since anyone had publicly leapt to his defense, and no one had ever done it with such an air of protectiveness." He absently rubbed the heel of his hand against his chest.
I love it when heroes absolutely rub their hands on their chest.
They're just so confused about feelings.
Is it love? Is it love? What is it? It's in there. What is it?
I feel something in there.
Love?
I think it might
be love.
I think it might be budding romance. Anyway, yeah. So like they're standing really close to each other, and he says he watched her. The air between them felt charged, as if he was attuned to her thoughts and reactions. Oh, bullshit! He must be more tired than he thought. Oh.
Mm-hmm. He drops her off and I think he walks her up. He meets Cat Richard. And then he's like, wait a minute. How do you get home? You don't drive? How do you get home at night? And she's like, I take the whatever.
I take the
subway
tube.
Or, and yes, the tube.
The tube.
That's what they do. They get in the tube. I know about it.
She's like, it's a 5-minute walk home. It's not
to a place. And he's like, well, how do you walk home? And she's like, I'm not in a bad neighborhood. This isn't like a high crime area. It's fine. But he's suddenly concerned about how she gets home every night and like whether or not she's safe.
And then he offers to drive her to work tonight. Mm-hmm. And then she says something like, I'm perfectly capable of walking myself. And he's like, I never questioned your capability. I merely offered you a lift. Are you accepting or declining, essentially? And she's like, oh, I'm totally accepting. You're so sexy.
So this is from his perspective. It says, Lainey, apparently unaware that there was rain dripping down the back of his collar, turned on the doorstep to face him. People generally reserve that expression for very young and not particularly bright children. Her hand came up to cup his cheek for a moment, and if she felt him stiffen, she ignored it. And then she said, this is Bayswater, your lordship, not a red light district. Chill. Your car might even still be there when we get back.
And then she feels real bad about making the car joke since the last time they were together in a sleepy village, it got keyed. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and she also
she's gonna like change and then they're gonna go back to the theater.
How dare you?
Sorry. What?
It says, Richard, breakfast. Richard, here, puss, puss, puss. Her voice had lowered coaxingly. It was husky and persuasive, with an intriguing edge of command. Richard, come here, baby. Jesus. He's dying. It's so good. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
I'm sorry, we're just going to read the whole book.
We're just going to read the whole book.
She bent to put the cat down, nudging it toward the food bowl, and turned to Richard. They were so close that he could count the tiny freckles on the bridge of her nose. Her smile faded, her eyes beautifully, intensely green, moved to his mouth, and he curled his fingers into fists. Richard, his name again, this time solely for him. His eyes closed for a minute then. Without moving a muscle, he deliberately distanced himself. We've wasted enough time. Shall we go? He could hear the chill in his own voice. She looked away from him. Right. There was a streak of pink under each high cheekbone. Let's go. And when they walked back out in the rain, his bloody hands were shaking.
They were shaking, you guys. Oh! And then the next chapter is her being like, I almost kissed Richard Troy. I was like leaning up to kiss Richard Troy. What the fuck is that about? I shouldn't be kissing this egomaniac stupid face.
Then we have a charity 5K.
Oh yeah,
which is my favorite.
She's not a runner.
She hates it.
She hates it.
You guys,
start to finish, she hates it.
But she hates it, and she does it faster than I would probably, but hates it.
Oh, certainly right now.
Comes in at like a 40 minutes or something like that. Mm-hmm. But she gets done with this 5K in the cold. And looks around and he's like miserably standing there in like the cold winter London rain. And she's like, I didn't expect you to be here. And he's like, I was told I had to be here. So it's not like I came here because like I wanted to watch you run 3 miles. I was ordered by the staff to be here. And then he says, I didn't think it would take you 45 minutes to do it or I wouldn't have come so early. Oh, it's funny. They have this really cute back and forth about how like he never sleeps over at people's houses and like kicks women out in the morning, and she accuses him of kicking women out in the morning, and he's like, well, only in summer and in winter, like I give them a blanket and like a hot tea before I do. And she asks him what happened to the barrister, which is what they call lawyers in England.
That is a lawyer. Yeah.
And he's like, what barrister? I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, working your way through the profession, I
well,
see.
No,
like, you can't even tell
like,
which one.
Because
she's a judge.
She's like, that one's a judge. And she's like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're just loving all the law professionals.
And she tells him he has to hug her because of photographers. And he's like, you're sweaty. I'm not hugging you. And they... Go back to her place?
No, this is where we've got the cheeky bum squeeze. And she smacks him in the chest. And he says, I'm just following instructions here. Against my chest, hand under bottom. You said 2 easy steps for a successful cuddle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so then after breakfast, because they go eat pancakes first, thank you very much.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, what? I guess they just go. They go because they want to go, because they want to hang out with each other. There's no reason they have to, right?
Well, she's starving, I'm sure.
Yeah. And they go back to her house and they have a cup of coffee. He kind of makes fun of her apartment, and then he gets worried that he hurt her feelings and is like, oh, did I hurt your feelings? And she's very like, this is super uncharacteristic. And I don't remember how it comes up about her sister, but it's not, I don't know if he's looking at pictures or asking or something.
Yeah, she's got pictures up.
Yeah, he ends up asking, and she ends up telling him about her sister.
She ends up getting really vulnerable. Like, she tells him everything.
Yeah. Oh, also he finds the script there that he's like, are you doing this script? And she tells him that she's auditioning for this TV
It's
role.
a TV show.
Yeah. She's like worried that she's got imposter syndrome, and he really pumps her up and is like, no, you're excellent. You're very good at your job.
You're a professional.
If this is something you want to do, you're going to get it. Like, you're very good.
Chin up, tits out. Let's go.
Yeah. So that's very cool. And then she tells him about her sister, and like they start talking about the charity, and he realizes how much it means to her.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you guys, it's on.
It's on.
Like they do a big kiss.
They do a big kiss. She like gets up on him and straddles him in a very hot way.
It says, no, I'm sorry, he said in a very simply matter-of-fact. He said very simply, matter-of-factly, I am very sorry, Lainey's talking about her sister.
Yeah.
She studied him. Yes, I can see that you are. On impulse, and to their mutual surprise, she leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Her lips nudged his jaw, and the stubble there was rough and raspy. Richard caught her upper arm, and she started to pull back. He held her there, poised above him, his eyes shockingly blue, full of questions, searching hers. She studied herself with a hand on his belly. She could feel a pulse thrumming under the soft fiber of his shirt. He seemed to make up his mind on a silently debated issue and acted with his usual swiftness once he'd come to a decision. I love that line.
Oh, me too.
A debated issue. And then once he chose, he just went in.
He just goes for it.
Her startled gasp was lost inside his mouth when he moved his hand up to her head, tangling his fingers in her hair and bringing her face to his in a rough, open kiss. And then they do smooch for several pages.
Boy!
And it is a good...
Her lashes are fluttering as she kisses him back, and there's like, his kiss was both demanding and coaxing.
Yes.
Playfully daring a response from her, even as he took what he wanted.
Mm-hmm. And then she kind of like comes to her senses, and she's like, oh, for God's sake, she was making out with Richard Troy.
Well, not to mention the fact that
of her flat.
She's a sweaty mess. She's got a uniboob with her sports bra, and she's like, I am not prepared for a sexy situation times.
Well, and also she's like, there's not even a photographer in 5 miles of here. Why am I even doing this? It's Richard Troy. This is ridiculous. And so she pulls away, and he kind of grumbles, and he's like, it's a bad idea. And she's like, yeah, this is a disastrous idea. We need to stop doing this.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry. It says, I think the situation is messy enough already, don't you? And he says, sadly, the situation seems to have been aborted before it had a chance to get messy. But I take your point. Anyway.
So then they go to a performance, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still Twitter-pated. I can't really. I'm having a hard time focusing.
It's so good.
It's really good. Okay, so then he offers her a lift to work, and she's like, yes. And then it says, good, don't be late. Oh, and Tig, Richard turned at the door. 10 out of 10 for effort, but the execution could do with some work. She drew in a sharp breath, but before she could retort, he added innocently, but then... You've never run a 5K before, have you? The fake out neg, Erin.
Neither have you, asshole.
No, but listen to me. The fake out neg, I feel like this is Michael and my dynamic so much of the time. He'll say something that sounds... fake out neg. God, I love it too. He'll say something and I'll be like, and then it's not at all what he's actually talking about. And it's just so charming. It's so charming. Oh, boy.
And then you guys, they go to a performance and she, like, straight up passes out, right?
Yeah, I think she faints on stage.
Sick. all night. She's like, I'm not sick. I'm not sick. I'm not sick. I'm fine. I'm not sick. And you guys, she's like wearing corsets and heavy dresses and like lights and the whole thing.
Yeah.
And she collapses on stage. The gossip columns are all ablaze. Lainey, the actress, collapses on stage. And so, you know, it's a big, you need to take care. I think he carries her at one point. You know, all the things that there are. It's good.
She does a faint. He does a panic. And then he and Will fight over who's going to take her home and who's going to sit at her bedside.
Will and Richard fighting over. Yeah. So she's like at her mom's place.
No,
or
her mom
mom's
comes
at
over.
Her place. I don't. Okay.
Yeah.
And she's like got this fever for a few days. And Richard and Will just sit in the kitchen for days staring at each other.
No, the mom gets rid of Will.
Yeah, after a while. But like for the whole first
it's like
a couple days, they're in there.
No, it's like an hour.
Days.
No, but then they keep on showing up. Like Richard won't
Yes, that's
won't
what I'm saying. I'm
leave.
not saying they're sleeping there, but they both keep showing up and like just glowering at each other across the table in the kitchen, being like, I'm here too. Me also here.
Her mom is really funny because she's like, do you want me to get rid of them both? And she's like, yes, I do. And so she goes toe to toe with Will, and Will immediately folds and leaves. And she's like, Richard, on the other hand, would not leave until he like came in and saw you and wiped your brow and did a big check-in, and like then he left. And every time he showed up again, he's like very brusque and businesslike and is just like, how is she? What is she doing? Purr, 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 purr.
But what's wonderful is he comes in, he sits on the bed. He like does like little comforting, like rubbing her temples sorts of things. And he's like, try not to die or it'll ruin the play, please. Like those sorts of like sardonic comments. And she's like, are you taking orders from the publicity team being here and like, you know, taking care of me or whatever? And he's like, no, I'm completely ignoring them because they told me I wasn't allowed to come here lest I also succumb to the illness. So he's just there because he loves her, Melanie.
He loves her. He's flouting all authority. Who would tell him to stay away? Ooh, it's a sexy hot.
She says, maybe you should stay away then. And he says, I have no doubt whatsoever that I should stay away. He touched a light hand to her hair and stood up. Nevertheless, I will see you tomorrow.
Oh, and he also says, you're hell on wheels for my blood pressure, Tig, at one point. I don't know when. Oh, that's when Will hears the endearment. And Will is like, what the fuck is that?
Why did you call me that?
I hate it.
And that's when I figured it out.
Oh, congratulations, Erin.
I was like, oh, she's Tig. Because in a lot of situations, he's calling her that, but when other people are around, and I was like, who is Tig?
Who is this Tig
it was a rough
person?
Role, Erin. Yeah. Like, it's not even close to her name. Because sometimes she calls him Troy as his, last name. And I'm like, that's not her last name, though. Right. I don't understand this. Yeah. Anyway. So she does get better.
Oh, wait. I'm so sorry.
Melody, we gotta move.
I know. So he slid a hand beneath her hips, gently kneading up her spine because she's very uncomfy and achy. And she made a soft sound of relief. Don't moan like that, he ordered with a husky half laugh. His face was close to hers. She could feel the tickle of his hair against her ear. It gives me ideas, and the timing is inappropriate. And then she goes, sicko. And he says, yes, you are. Hence my hesitation.
Yep.
Oh, it's so good.
So she does get better.
She does.
And they do make out a little bit once she's better. And like, he's like, I'll chance it. I'll chance the getting sick. If I'm to be infected, I've already been so. And then they go to a big fancy award show.
They have big fancy award show. Yeah.
It's a BAFTA?
Yeah. BAFTAs. Yeah. I think.
Those BAFTAs. Mm-hmm. And they do the play ones. It's the British Annual Theater
Fellowship of Theater.
Nope. British Actor Film and Theater Awards.
There you go.
There it is.
Get it,
BAFTAs.
Erin. You looked it up or something, I'm sure.
Nope. It's Oscar times, but England times.
Yep. But in the Englands.
So there they are. All those British actors, they're all here. There they are. All the British actors, they're in the room. She walks in with Will, and he's like flirting with her and talking about makeup sex. He's just being kind of like an asshole.
He's being clingy
like,
in front of all the photographers and like kissing her on the cheek and stuff, and she doesn't like it.
It's just to make Richard pissed off, and it works.
Well, because Richard can't arrive with her because he's at a different schmafta, and so he's doing like a speaking engagement.
Yes.
And
it's like in furtherance of his like political aspirations of being in charge of the schmur. And like, I don't know if he's said yet, but it's like his dad was this very conservative politician and tried to shut down all the arts. And now he's trying to become the president of the schmur so that he can like,
so that he can control funding and make sure that like underprivileged communities get arts funding and not just like the opera or whatever.
Right. So he's trying to flit around and do all these like speaking engagements and try to like network so that he can be the president.
Yeah, but the most important thing about Will is that the only reason he's cuddling up and talking about makeup sex is because Cristal went back to her husband. That fucker.
Yeah, Cristal was married the whole time.
Yeah.
But you want to know what Richard looks like when he showed up?
Oh, Erin.
He does look like a press release for Armani.
Ooh.
She did love a good three-piece suit. Richard's eyes scanned her clinging black gown, resting for an interested moment on the plunging neckline.
Yeah.
She hoped he appreciated it. More double-sided tape had been employed in that wrangling job than Santa's elves used on Christmas. So he looks great. They sit next to each other at the award show. Will and Richard are against each other in the same category.
And Will wins.
Such
Richard
bullshit. Does not.
Well, but also because he was up for a totally different play. And so afterwards, Richard seems a little pissed off. And she's like, hey, Sourpuss, you were bad in that role. And he's like, yeah, somebody told me right before I went on stage that an old college friend of mine died by suicide. And so I was a little off. But that shouldn't be an excuse because it was a 3-day run. And so I let the audience down. I let down my playmates. I let down the producers. I let down everybody. And I should not have let that get to me like that. And Lainey's like, oh my gosh. It's okay to be human, Richard. You have feelings. That's a good thing. Ugh. It's such a, like, she's sort of prodding and poking at him, and then he just, like, hits her with this real thing that happened. And it's really sweet because you guys, his walls are coming down. He has this feeling in his chest, and he can't name it. He doesn't know what it is.
He doesn't know what it is.
He's baffled.
Lynette, the Richard's assistant lady, comes over and asks, hey, is it all still like an act? You know, because she's like, she knows Richard really well. And she's been watching them. And Lainey's like, well, what do you think? And Lynette looks thoughtful. I think, she said before she disappeared into the crowd, that I hope for Richard's sake you can't act as well as that. Because if she's acting, he's about to get his heart broken.
Yeah. So then they're in the car, and
she missed the audition for that TV role.
Yes, because she
got sick. And they didn't reschedule it. They were like, you missed it, sorry.
Right.
And so Richard pulled some strings and got her that audition again. And so she gets a little pissed at him about that. And he's like, no one gets ahead on their own. You know, like, you've got to let people help you that know that you're talented. I wouldn't have pulled the strings if I didn't actually think you deserved it. You know, I'm not doing this because we're friends. I'm doing this because you're good.
Well, and also, it's not like I got you the role. I just got you the meeting you had already earned.
Sure.
That's all. Like, get over yourself. And she's like, grr. But then she's very, very happy about it. And then
and she goes, they go back to his house.
So then she's like, hey, Richard, let's go back to your house. It's on TM.
Yes, I believe it to be on TM.
TM is what she says.
So they start making out. This is this is one of my favorite lines in the book, when they're like making out on his couch, and then he kind of like pauses and pulls back. It says Richard tilted. She's like, what's wrong? What's going on? It says Richard tilted up her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. His eyes were almost black with arousal. Tell me you want this me.
Yeah.
It was enlightening that she could be this far gone with desire, yet still capable of irritation. Richard, she braced herself against his stomach. I am prepared to stroke many things right now, but your ego is not one of them.
Yeah.
And they talk about, he's like, you hated me a few weeks ago. I just want to know that this isn't like part of the act thing, like you like me. And she's like, you hated me too. And he's like, I didn't hate you. I just like didn't care at all.
Right. He says, no, I never hated you. And she goes, no, you barely knew I existed. I think that's worse. And he goes, I don't want to do this if it's not for the right reasons. If it's anything to do with, because he told her, he says, if it's anything to do with what I told you tonight. Because earlier, while they were standing there, they were talking about his dad. This is where we find out that he's like an awful Tory mess who stripped funding from everything. And then he was found to have fiddled some parliament votes and stuff. And then he shot himself. And so Richard tells her that the whole family PR team banded together and they got everyone to say it was a heart attack, a very sudden heart attack. But the real story is that he also died by suicide. And it's like this crazy family secret. And Richard never had a good relationship with his father, and he also didn't really respect his father, and he doesn't know why they were protecting his father.
Hated that he was interested in being an actor, which is a silly profession. Yeah, and, the whole thing, guys.
The whole thing. He's got daddy issues, and so he's like, I don't want a pity fuck.
He doesn't want a pity fuck, and she's like, no.
Yeah, and so she just makes out with his face real hard. She's like, let me show you.
So then, clip 2, a chapter that I cannot wait to read aloud to you because it made my heart sing. Okay.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Richard is dragged to a 1-year-old's birthday party.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry.
Lainey.
Are we just skipping over the super hot
Yes, because
sex?
Lucy Parker basically skips over the sex. It's just a montage.
Yeah, it is.
What do you want?
So, but I want to talk about how I felt during it because I was very conflicted. On the one hand, I prefer the openest doors possible. I would like to feel what's happening in their bodies, if at all possible.
Yes, sure.
And so it was really weird that it was this I don't know, almost like this is going to sound bad. The writing's really good, so don't take it like it's a bad. But it was almost like an older 80s or 90s movie with the soft lighting and the, Vaseline lenses and the montage and the kiss here and the lick there and the stroke here and the blah, blah, blah. And yet it gave me a big romance boner. And I was
I loved it.
Big sigh. Am very happy about it. And it was weird for me. So that's all.
Okay.
That's all.
It's kind of just a little little scenes.
It is beautifully written.
It's really well written.
Oof.
All right.
Okay, sorry.
Now Richard.
Now Erin's heart's singing because there's a grumpy person at a 1-year-old's birthday party.
It just made me,
it's so cute.
Bear, said one of the smaller girls. She showed him a dilapidated toy. Most of the fur had been sucked off one ear. Bear, she said again, more insistently. This sentence sang to me. He wasn't sure what she was looking for by way of a response. What do you say back? Fine, okay. To start with, it wasn't a bear. It was a cat, possibly a mouse, less likely a squirrel. Definitely not a bear. The kid was related to Lainey, so he suspected she wouldn't appreciate being corrected on the point. Gingerly, he took the mystery animal from her and says, cute.
Cute?
The lie seemed to satisfy the girl. To his relief, one of Lainey's sisters-in-law appeared with a carton of ice cream and a box of waffle cones, and the little girl took off running. He turned the slightly sticky toy over in his hands, wondering where to put it. Through the hot cycle of the washing machine would be his first instinct. What do you do? When they hand you the thing, what do you do? You don't want it. You don't want to, do they want it back? It's theirs. What do you do? You put it down on the ground?
There's a moment later on when another child comes over and like clearly wants something and Richard's not sure what to do. And he's like, I can't offer it this not bear because this seems like a very proprietary toy. Like,
this is the other kids thing. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know the rules. And then a few pages later, Lainey's holding a baby, a hen.
Ooh, she did look beautiful.
He'd read an abysmal script a few months ago in which the protagonist had been struck dumb by the apparent sensual sight of his love interest clutching an infant. I've also read that script, Richard, and I hate it. Watching Lainey sway with the baby, Richard's main thought was for the welfare of her clothing. These kids had consumed enough food to feed a barracks. It seemed like tempting fate to jiggle one up and down. Yes! That is the most thoughts. Yes! His ovaries didn't explode, you guys, and I understood. Then a bunch of kids get in a fight.
It's a romance, though, because it
She's
says
beautiful.
She did look beautiful holding the baby. She had managed to look beautiful holding a sick bucket. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with a perfect smile or large breasts or gorgeous hair and had everything to do with her.
It's
big
very cute.
Romance. Anyway.
Then some kids get in a fight, and it says, Richard had occasionally wondered if he'd missed something by being an only child. Same. Grievous bodily harm, by the looks of it. Same. Some people are like, oh, only children are weird. Only children. It's like, yeah, it sounds like your life sucked and you're jealous. My life was awesome. I did whatever Erin wanted to do all the time, every day. It was the best. Anyways, I just wanted you guys to know about that.
She also looked over at him, smiled that perfect smile, and for a moment, he couldn't fucking breathe, everybody. So, just FYI.
Yeah. Her brother comes up and is like, hey, word on the street is you're a bit of a prick and you're dating my sister. Yeah. Is that like the case? Are you a bit of a prick? And he's like, well, she seems to think I am one and I really respect her opinion. So sure. And he's like, I like this.
Yeah.
You know, he respects my sister.
It's very smart. Very smart. Anyway, so then he has a big sword fight with some of the older boys and he uses some of that acting sword swooshery.
Herbs.
Oh my God, how dare you?
Herbs.
And then they see some more pictures of her sister and it's a wonderful. And then Lainey goes and does something and Richard overhears two of her lady relatives be like, man, do we think this is real? And they were like, well, we thought that farmer kid was real. And like,
she really liked him.
They seemed totally besotted. And then he fucked it up. And so they're like, I bet this is just a rebound anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. And rebounds never last and not to worry about it. The kid that comes up and wants to sword fight with him.
Yeah.
Comes up and says, you're the baddie. Like gives him the sword and says that he's the bad guy.
Oh, yeah.
And Richard says, again, it seems to be the general consensus around here.
Oh.
So, yeah, sure. I guess
I have that highlighted too. Oh.
I loved it.
So anyway, then she sees him, you know, doing all the stuff and she's all really excited about it and it's very sweet.
Yeah.
Then Sarah is like, so are you guys, how's it going? And she's like, I don't know. I really like him, but I have no idea how he feels about me. And Sarah's like, he is super over the moon about you. What are you talking about?
It's super duper clear.
It's very obvious to everyone.
Then, on the way out of this birthday party, they figure out, because of the internet, that it's Richard's birthday and has been all day.
And he hasn't said a thing.
So on their way back to her place, she asks him if he would swing her by the grocery store to just get like a few items. And then she's in there forever and comes out with all these bags. And he's like, you're doing your weekly shopping?
I'm just taking you for shopping home, now?
Like, I'm just taking you. And then they get back to her place and she does make him a pie.
She makes him a pie.
She makes him a pie. And then puts little candles in it.
And he's like, you made me a pie. And she says, well, you don't like cake. And he's like,
cake.
Oh my gosh, she noticed that one time I didn't eat cake at a castmate's like shindig. And he's like, you're right. I don't like cake.
And then she spells out happy birthday in M&ms on the cake, which I don't think is, I've thought about the logistics of this for a long time.
It would be so big.
It would be way too big. You need a full pizza for that.
You do.
Princess Diaries. And
Yeah.
I feel like a pie is a much smaller circle. You're not going to get happy birthday on there. And also it's a hot pie. And those M&ms are going to melt into there.
But
into
I
a
think
hot
that's the point.
mess.
No, that's the point.
But then they're going to spread out. Basically, this is not a readable inscription of happy birthday.
Also,
is all I'm
I
trying
do
to say.
think it was
This is
3
not-
lines. Happy birthday. And that would even
That's
be
fine.
rough. Yeah.
Happy? No, because happy is too long. You guys, Bing Boong Bong Logistics with Erin. This is not sound. This is an unsound part of
I know.
the thing.
I'm certain that happy was on an arch. Yeah.
No, that makes it worse, because if the happy is on an arch, then the birth doesn't fit. Then we've taken off the room from the sides.
I hear you.
You know?
I hear you. I know.
No.
I was having a hard
No.
time with it as well, but we
No.
we trudged on. It could have been.
And you forget how soon you forget, Melody, that there's also candles involved.
Yeah.
No, fuck no.
In the swoop of the pea.
And also
in
because it
between
is a
there.
fruit pie, surface space has been taken up by the side of the crust as well. There's not enough room. Blaney.
Also, Richard is like chocolate with this fruit pie, but he just goes with it. What is it, like an apricot peach pie or something like that? It sounds so good.
Maybe she buys that pie. Does she make that pie?
No,
or does
she
buy
does
that
buy
pie?
that pie. She buys it.
Yeah, I think she buys that pie. Because they talk about how neither of them can cook.
Yeah, which I actually found way more believable and wonderful that she just like popped into a bakery and picked up a pie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being the romance heroine that can all of a sudden like cook a royal wedding cake. Anyway, I'm not totally projecting.
They talk about some deep stuff here, namely his mother's death.
Yeah.
I want to say that when she talks, I forgot to note this earlier. When she talks about how her sister dying of cancer at the beginning of this book, it is gorgeous.
It
is an explanation of how somebody dies slowly from an illness that rang very true.
Same, yeah.
For a very bubbly, like frothy, bubblegummy romance. Like this is a very light romance. And that like 2 paragraphs that she devoted to what it was like to watch her sister die, I felt were very super accurate, and how her sister died alone because everyone does.
Yeah.
And he talks about how his mother died and no one noticed for days.
Yeah.
And there's this line where she says Hannah had died alone despite the fact that her hands had been held tightly. Like, I just love this explanation about how everyone dies alone. But she had not died lonely.
Right.
And Lainey didn't want Richard to live lonely. And about how his mother died lonely. And it's just a beautiful.
It really, really is. And what I liked about it is that a lot of times things like this are very, very tricky for me just because it hits home with the experience I had with my dad. And so while it pierced me right in the soul, it was never overwhelming.
I wouldn't call it a content warning or a trigger warning
for
somebody
I wouldn't.
Who's had that experience in this book, because it rang so true that I just liked reading. I just felt very like, I don't know, kind of validated by it.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. So that's the interesting thing, is that even though all of these sections are talking about death, it still manages to be very life affirming.
Yes, I guess that's what I meant.
Yeah.
It feels like, yeah, that is how that is. I'm glad somebody said it.
Yeah.
Is how it felt. Instead of being like, oh, God, this is sad and I don't want it to like remind me of such and such. You know?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It didn't feel unsafe.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. So then she like brings it. She's like, fuck, I didn't really mean to talk about his mother's like heart attack or whatever on his birthday. So then like it's getting real sad. So she's like, okay, well now for the next act, and pulls out a DVD of him while at Oxford doing some
Grease. Some play.
Grease. I
He
forgot
is doing
it's Grease.
Grease. And so he's like, I am not watching this. You can watch it, but I am not. You will sit on my lap so that I can check
And block
emails
the TV.
and fondle you a little bit. And
But
she's
she
like,
also
yeah,
has
that sounds great.
she
You
has
grab
a
on
video
this
of
titty.
herself though too,
Yeah.
and doing an embarrassing performance.
Yeah.
with hair extensions. And so it says,
it's Oklahoma
must
too.
Be embarrassing. I mean complete and total humiliation. She says, I'm singing I Can't Say No. I have hair extensions and braces, and it was a single-sex school, so my love interest was played by a 15-year-old girl who was just about concussed by my left boob during the finale. It ain't good.
Oh, it's so
anyway,
lovely.
So, they're in love now.
Yeah, and so they have some sex, and then they go to bed, and then his phone starts ringing in the morning, and she keeps on trying to like push him over, and he won't answer the phone. And so she answers it, and it's a publicist of some sort. It's his agent, I think. And she's like, oh, hi, Lynette. And Lynette's like, we're having little off-hours sleepovers, huh? And it's very funny. Anyway, so I don't remember why she's calling. She says they've taken a
hot yoga, and she's like, because that happens at 3 a.m, right? Hot yoga.
Yeah.
But then the next thing is like, Will is like, hey, I've been meaning to talk to you. I want to have a serious conversation with you about your relationship with Richard.
Yeah.
And it is not okay. Like, you're lowering yourself to his level. He is an asshole. He has made everyone on this set feel like less than and go home in tears. And it's like, it's not cool for you to be dating this guy. And she sticks up for him, and like they just have this like long argument about, he says he's a user, a poor little rich boy, Will said bitterly, unconsciously borrowing Lynette's words, who stood on his old family money to get where he is, and who wouldn't get out of bed in the morning if it wasn't to his advantage. He's using you and you're buying it. Like, he thinks that she's fallen in love with Richard, but Richard is just using her for the publicity, and she's like a pawn in his plan.
Yeah.
And he says, look at his family, a mother who whored around Europe, a father who was a demented old bigot, whose death, by the way, was supposedly brought on by Troy Jr. And she says Richard did not cause his father's suicide. And then she realizes she spilled the secret.
Yeah.
Because his father
Will
suicide.
was saying that Troy Jr. made him have the heart attack. And she spilled the secret. So she's like, oh my God, I totally made a mistake just now. And Will like frowns and asks the question and then just like keeps going. So then he's standing there being like, you really need to think about this. And then Richard says from the hallway, think about what?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my God, how much did he hear? Does he know that I spilled this family secret? He didn't hear anything, but he is like, you should probably go now. Lainey seems like she asked you to go. Will's like, try to throw me out. And Lainey's like, everybody calm the fuck down.
So the next thing they do is they go to this fancy party.
Yes.
And it's like he needs to get this guy on his side for like the thing that he wants to be elected to because of the thing.
Yeah. So it's a dinner party of the vice president of the RSPA. Yes.
And then he's like a dick, and he like tries to assault Lainey. Like, he gets her in a room and like tries to like grope her and like rips her skirt and stuff, and it's rough. And like Richards tries to beat him up. Like, it's that whole thing.
Yeah.
But basically, because of that, he's like lost his shot at the thing that he wants of the
presidency,
because he's the vice president of it. Yes.
Oh boy.
And so it's a good chapter. Read it, but I don't want to go through the whole thing of like it starts out like he has his hand on her knee, and
we don't
it like gets worse, and eventually he like corners her.
You're doing it
and like tries to we
don't have to do that.
Tries to assault her.
So then as they're leaving, Richard he gets a call from Lynette, and he pulls out his iPad, and Lainey's like standing there like sort of shaking, being like, I can't. Well, first she apologizes. She's like, I'm so sorry that I messed up your chance to get this guy's support for the presidency. And he's like, if that's the kind of guy I'd be allying myself with, I don't want his support. Like, I don't want that. That's bullshit. So then he gets the call from Lynette, pulls out the iPad, and there's this article that's like, Richard Troy's dad did kill himself. It's likely because he was fiddling with parliament votes.
Oh, no, it doesn't say that yet, but she's like,
oh, yeah.
She's like, well, they don't know why. And he's like, they're going to find out why.
Yeah.
It's like, it's only a matter of time.
So anyway, he's like, I haven't told anybody but you. You are literally the only person. So how did this happen? And she's like, I accidentally said it out loud in front of Will, and I can't believe that he would go this low.
Oh, it's rough.
Richard just puts on a stone cold face and is like, I'm going to take you home now.
Mm-hmm.
Oof, is it rough.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, I really want to help you with this. And he says, this was...
Oh, God. No, he said.
Yeah, thank you.
I suppose we got a bit carried away by the pretense. And she didn't. It's like stony silence. And then he says that. And she doesn't reply. And he says, it's easy to lose sight of reality when you're immersed in a role, he went on, echoing her once upon a time sentiments. He paused, and the muscle in his jaw jumped again. However, I think this particular run is over.
Ooh.
It was a good exit line, delivered with so little emphasis that avoided going too soap opera. She didn't watch him drive away.
So then the next chapter happens, and she's like, I am not letting Richard get away so easily. I'm not doing that. So she goes over to the current president's house, and it's like, hey, this thing happened to me last night. Your vice president tried to assault me. I need you to support Richard. He's a really good dude, and I don't want my thing to fuck up his thing. And the president's like, I really like your chutzpah, and also I really like Richard. I can't say that out loud, but I do. And I really don't like my VP. Can't say that out loud, but it's true. And so she's like, all right, cool. We have an accord then. And so after having tea with him, she fucks off and she goes back to the playhouse.
And confronts Will. Mad at Will for telling the papers. And he's like, I'm sorry, I was mad. And the journalists were there. And she's like, it's no excuse. You are fucking terrible. And then she tries to apologize to Richard. Richard will just not have it. He's like, there's just no excuse for this. Like, he is just ignoring her. And she's like, I wouldn't do this on purpose. Right. And it's such a big, she says, you were totally right yesterday. Yeah. Richard's eyes had narrowed. He merely raised an eyebrow in response, conceding no further advantage. You have no idea. He said something about, I had no idea what I was in for with this bullshit with you.
Right.
And she's like, you had no idea what you were in for. And she said, you were also wrong yesterday. We never pretended with each other, you and I. And he's like, they keep trying to talk. They're in these rehearsals because they've been doing a bad job because of all their emotions. And they just keep getting interrupted. She keeps trying to talk to him and he keeps just ignoring her. And it's such a big frustrate, you guys.
Mm-hmm. And isn't there construction going on right now? I swear there is.
Maybe.
Is that the next scene? I don't know.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, so because of all this, he lost the speaking engagement. That's why Lynette called at 6:30 in the morning that day to be like, a Parliament bigwig wants you talking at this cool thing that'll help you with the presidency. But he lost that because of the scandal.
Right.
So that's a fucked up. And so Lainey's just like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still fighting for you. We're still going to talk. This is still a thing. Until you tell me this is definitely not a thing, I'm here.
At one of the times that she tries to talk to him, he says, do you want to sit? She says, no, I want you. She goes into his dressing room and he's like, do you want to sit down? And she says, no, I want you to stop treating me like I'm here to audit your taxes. Yeah. And he's like, if you were here to audit my taxes, I would have offered you coffee. Ooh. It is just, he is so cold for days, you guys. Yeah. It is the worst.
It's also the best.
She tells him that she went to the president's house. She tries to be like, I'm trying. What can I do?
Right. I want to make it up to you.
He's like, there's nothing that can be done. It's like, there's nothing that can be done. And finally she's like, I can't undo it.
Right.
So what can I do going forward? And he's like, it's less that it happened, but also the media's got it wrong of what happened with him. And also that it was Will that you told. It's too much things. I can't.
And because I let you close enough to be able to hurt me.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. He's just like, you are a liability because this is pain that it came from you. If it was someone, if it was my enemy, that would be another thing, but it was you. Oof.
Yeah. And it was Will.
And it was Will.
And it's your ex. And he says, I feel like I got shafted by my lover, my best friend, and my family all at once. But they just have this series of conversations. There's another one too where he's like, I was just your rebound relationship. And she's like, where does this come from? Yeah. Why is this that doesn't have anything to do with it? And he's like, oh, it doesn't? Yeah. It's, So they keep on frustrated.
They keep on having all of these conversations, and toward the end, it does seem like he is getting much less frosty. He's like, "I'm willing to hear you out. True. I'm willing to talk about this, and I think that we might be able to figure it out." So then she goes back to the theater, and there is a bunch of construction happening on all the things. And then the director sends he and Will downstairs because they don't need them for 4 scenes or something.
Right.
And Lainey's going to go over stuff with Chloe. So then Lainey and Chloe are on stage, and there's a big crash, bang, boom, cave in crazy. And a bunch of the theater just disintegrates, and everything falls into the stalls where their dressing rooms are and where they know Will and Richard to be. Oh my God, it's a bad.
Lainey goes to
dive
the hole,
into
thinking that she will dive into the hole and just get Richard
and save
out of
Richard.
It.
She just needs to save him is all.
She doesn't even know what's happening until she's outside. They have to drag her
kicking
outside.
And screaming. Trying to get into that hole.
I would try to get into that hole too.
You gotta for your partner. You gotta.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's real, Erin.
She's freaking out. Both of them are likely dead in the hole.
Yeah.
And then we clip to that hole.
Yes.
Cut to hole.
And
Richard not dead in hole. If anything, Hole just annoyed Richard. I just
big inconvenience is Hole.
What a day it's been, and now look at this. My dressing room is caving in on me. How fucking great.
There's so much dust on my shirt, he says.
But it does get a danger.
It's scary.
So here's where he's like, it didn't cave in. He probably could have gotten out. But then he realizes, Will Farmer is over there, likely dead under bricks. I should probably go deeper into Hole
to
go
check.
Get Will Farmer. And, so he does, and then more of the thing collapses on them. There's a beam involved.
Yeah, he's got to lift up a beam so that Will Farmer can hobble out.
He does save the life of Will Farmer, maybe.
He definitely does.
The idea is, Richard could have gotten out, but, went to save Will. What a hero.
Because he's such a noble.
He is a noble, even this man that he hates.
Yeah.
And then, they come out and they're all bloody and dusty, and Richard doesn't have a shirt. It's abs, pants.
And no dick.
No, just pants. Well, there's a dick, but it's just pants.
It's covered by pants.
Because he was, changing at the time.
Yeah.
In the dressing room.
Ooh. So they get put directly into an ambulance. Lainey wants to go see him, but he looks over at her and either smirks or winks or something.
Oh, wait. When he goes to save Will, he thinks all he could think of in that moment. He thinks about not saving Will because he is a little selfish. Richard.
And
that's
also,
what we like about
this is
him.
not his. This isn't his job. He's not a firefighter.
Right,
He doesn't know safety of buildings.
He saves him for Lainey. He says
does.
All he could think about in that moment was Lainey's face, the look in her eyes when she told him about her sister, the prospect of telling her that she'd lost somebody else because she was all right. She had to be. Any other outcome was totally unacceptable. He went back. That's why he went back for Will, because he couldn't stand the idea that she would lose a friend.
Yeah. Oh, it's so sweet. So anyway, she goes to the hospital.
Yeah.
And she ends up accidentally going to Will's room first, which is nice.
Whoops.
Because she gets to be like, hey, you're a dickwad, but I'm glad you're alive. And he's like, yeah, also Richard didn't have to come save me, and he's a nice guy, and I'm glad you guys are maybe together. And so then she does go to Richard's room, and they do make up, and they decide to be together forever.
Yes.
And, oh man, he says, I'm not denying I would have been angry no matter who you told, but I doubt I would have left you on your doorstep if it had been someone else, anyone else. I was jealous of Will fucking Farmer. It doesn't get much lower than that. And she says, you don't need to be jealous of anyone. What I feel for you and how I felt about Will, it's not even on the same planet.
Oh,
it's love.
I love you, Richard. It's so great.
Oh, and then she does tell him that she loves him. And then he says, love? And she says, yes, you dummy, basically. And then there is an epilogue. Erin, do you want me to tell you what happened in the epilogue?
I skimmed it a little bit.
It's
it seems
hot.
like a little bit of like a
So
scene.
She
and then
gets
he says
that TV part that she auditioned for. And then she's doing this love sexy scene. And the actor that she's with gets like very concernicus and has to end the scene because Richard has come in and he doesn't want to make Richard mad. He's worried about Richard's reputation for a bad boy who will fly off the handle. Meanwhile, Richard's like, "Ugh, she's the best. She's so talented. Look at her go. Look at how sexy she looks."
He says
acting.
this sexy thing. He says, "I love you, and I love you so much, and I love you more every day." And like, I can't even imagine how much I'm gonna love you when I'm 90 years old and I die of a sex-induced heart attack because of how much I love you.
Yeah.
And she's like, "What play is that from?" And he's like,
"It's from Richard Troy's monologue."
Oh, he says it's Richard III. It's something he said to his own reflection in the mirror, and it didn't make the final cut.
Anyway, so they're going to Scotland, and they're really excited because they are eloping to Gretna Green, you guys. They're eloping.
Married.
They got married, Z's.
It's a great book.
It's a big romance, Erin. I'm in love with them.
Big romance.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. Anyway, so I have one gripe about this book. Can I tell you my gripe?
We're 2 hours in.
I'm sorry. Here's my gripe. My only gripe is, so we do find out that he never actually threw the plate. That was completely fabricated on the chef's part. But I did want something where he had some kind of overreaction because he is so well behaved in this thing. Like, he never had a single slip up. And I really wanted him to because I just don't believe that he was a bad boy. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all. It's my only gripe. It's a great book. I love it. Anyway. Yep. All right, Erin. Do you have a lady love?
No.
I have a lady love. Here's my lady love. Okay. So a little while ago, I think it's called Brut India, BRUT India. It's a media company that does journalistic stuff, and it's all digital. They did this super wonderful video of Mindy Kaling cooking in her kitchen with Kamala Harris.
That sounds great.
Boy, is it a big lady love. Because
what are they cooking?
They cooked dosa and the potato curry that generally goes with it. I
was wondering. Okay.
Yeah. So Mindy Kaling was really excited because Kamala Harris is half South Indian. And then she's half Jamaican, and both of her parents were immigrants to this country. So it's just like, it's really cute. And she's like, yeah, every time I run into an Indian person, they're like, "Did you know that Kamala Harris is Indian?" And Mindy Kaling's like, "Yes, I did know that." And then there's a moment where she's like, "Senator Harris, I don't know what to call you. I can't call you by your first name because you've achieved so much." And Kamala looks at her and she's like, "Just don't call me auntie." And Mindy's like, "Okay, I won't call you auntie." I don't know, you guys. I'll link it in the episode notes. It is just like such a big lady love. It's really nice to see a new side of Kamala Harris, you know, because I've always only seen her in like very official capacities.
Nice just to see women supporting each other and talking and hanging out, just generally.
It's so nice. Anyway, I'm really stoked for Biden-Harris 2020. And I also think that my other lady love, our other lady love, should be make sure you're registered to vote so that you can vote. And also, I have another lady love. I have another lady love that I'm stealing from My Favorite Murder. Is that okay? I don't care. The lady love that I'm stealing from them is support our post office in some sort of way. Did you know the post office, the USPS, has merch? If you don't want to buy stamps, although I don't know why you wouldn't, get some of that merch. There's like apparently
merch.
Yeah, there's like a little shirt that says Mr. Zip. It's like it's like this character. I don't know. Throw some money
Smokey
at the
Bear,
post office.
But for the post office?
Exactly. Just like Smokey Bear, but for the post office.
Huh.
And we need to support the post office because they are integral and they're being undercut and and undermined by the sitting president because he's terrified of losing. So anyway, support the post office. It's my lady love. Yeah.
Anything I think of in this moment is gonna be stupid. I just know it.
It's gonna be what?
I'm gonna think of like a popsicle or something to say as my lady love. This is how this always happens. And I'm gonna be like, try this new candy bean that I found. I don't know.
I did give two. One. You can just say cosign on mine if you want, or not.
Yeah, sure, cosign. I will say that when you were talking about Kamala Harris and Mindy Kaling cooking the Indian foods, it reminded me that at one of our local Indian restaurants, Namaste Shangri-La, they always have on, it's the name of the restaurant.
I hear you.
They have on the TV, they have like this Indian cooking show.
Ooh.
That is clearly like made for and by India. Like this isn't on anywhere. Like I've checked Netflix. I've tried to Google this lady's name, which I can't remember in this moment. It is so soothing to watch this older Indian woman cook, and I cannot find it. I can't find it anywhere, and I just want to watch it. And there's no English subtitles or anything, but like sometimes when it clips away to a commercial or whatever, like I've written down the name of the thing and I still can't find it anywhere. And it's like, it's such a soothe. And I can't find her.
That's nice. Our local Indian restaurant always has very energetic Bollywood movies on, which is great. Yes. But it is not a
dual screen situation.
Whoa.
On one end of the restaurant, you have the Bollywood. I almost said Dollywood, which
Dollywood?
is a different situation. Bollywood movies, and then on the other side, you have like the lady cooking.
Oh,
yeah. So you get to see both.
Wow.
Well, it's more like music videos, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not movies.
That's what
music
I mean.
Videos.
Yeah.
Bollywood music videos.
Anyway, so that was
that's not a lady love it. That's literally nothing. So I'm glad that you stayed on for me to say literally nothing. Not the name of the show, not anything. Like you can do nothing with what I just said. So thank you for listening to Heaving Bosoms. You can find us
on all the places. I'll link them in the show notes.
You can buy merch at our Redbubble shop.
Yeah.
You can listen to our bonus Patreon content on Patreon/Heaving Bosoms podcast.
Yep.
That's the end.
That's the end. So keep being a badass.
And love yourself as much as you love smelling your friend's pizza crust hair and ruining her pizza crust hair sensibilities
for the rest of her life.
Self-esteem.
Yeah.
For the rest of her life.
For giving her a complete complex.
Yeah, total complex for the rest of her life. Because she thinks her hair smells like pizza crusts.
That sounds nice to me, actually. So
yeah, appetizing.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, you. Yes, listener, you. Are you loving the show? If so, please leave a rating and review in your podcast app. The 90 seconds you take to say something nice not only helps new people find the show, but it makes me super smile over at HBHQ. Also, I've had a few people ask, and the answer is yes. We are still doing the 5-star bribe. If you leave us a review with 5 stars, then we'll do whatever book you want. We're real deep into the list, though, so it might be a while. Lilas! Okay, back to the show.